All right, so welcome back to Arise Youth Group. Before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe. For more great content. If you haven't, if you're not here today, you can catch up on some great sermons and all that good stuff. So we want to keep this pretty short because the camera cuts off at 30 minutes. We should get a video camera, right? Just to get it if we want to get it longer, but I'll try to keep it around 20 minutes. So we're just going to dive right into it. So we are continuing in our series of lights, camera, action, and today we are. Last week dropped my chain. And last week we talked about what did we talk about last week? I forgot what we talked. Oh yeah, fantasy. We talked about fantasy last week. Lion, the Witch of the Wardrobe, the Lord of the Rings, all that great stuff. But today we are going to be talking about, drum roll. So today we are going to be talking about science fiction in the Bible. So this one was a bit tricky because science fiction. Well, you think of science fiction, lightsabers, lasers, and that guy in the mask over there. And, of course, they didn't have all that stuff back then, right? But if you really think about it, science fiction, all it is just basically like fantasy, except it's in a different setting, right? There's the chosen one, which is, Luke Skywalker. There's the evil villain dragon person with the extraordinary power, sorcery, and stuff like that. You got Darth Vader and Lord Sidious and the Force and all that kind of stuff, right? It's basically the same thing as fantasy, except it's in a different setting with different technologies and different ideas. And so that's what we're going to be looking at. We're not going to be looking at the characters. Since we already did that on fantasy, you can check that out at our last video, right here on the title card. I'm pretty sure that's where the title card should be, right? Just look at the title card. Well, anyways, we're going to be looking at the concept of science fiction in the Bible and the various concepts that the Bible emulates. And do not be fooled for a second, because there are science fiction stuff going on in the Bible, at least from the perspective of people back then. So let's take a look at the tropes of science fiction. So we got all this cool stuff. There's new technology, laser guns, lightsabers. We got space. The final frontier, just going up to space, I need to go to Mars real quick to get milk. Let me just go to Mars real quick. So the new kinds of war, like new ways to fight wars. Here we have tanks and guns and stuff like that, But in science fiction, they fight with spaceships, lasers, and stuff like that. Photon cannons. Humanity is unchanging. That's a big one too, because even though in a couple thousand years in the future, if we master space exploration, have laser guns and stuff like that, humanity in all these contexts is just as corruptible and just as evil as ever, right? That's the whole point. It wouldn't be really much of a great genre if the humans evolved to just be what, we have achieved world peace. There's nothing wrong with humanity now. We are all perfect in every way. That wouldn't make a really good story, right? But in reality, even if we did have all that technology, all it really would do was just give us more tools to be evil with, right? And that's the theme that we see. We've got aliens, different planets, different cultures, and different people and races, and the future. This usually takes place in the future, unless you're talking about Star Wars, which takes place a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Which I never really understood that. I wonder what the lore implications of that is. Just this is actually in our past, millions of years ago, this happened in a galaxy far away. I don't know. Maybe it's just some line that Luke just forgot his name. Luke, Lucas. Yeah, Lucas. He just came up with. He was this will sound kind of dramatic. So, anyways, let's take a look at the ideas that are being presented in the Bible. So these are the old ideas. These are the things that other nations practice outside of Israel, right? So Israel is the chosen nation, and all the other nations outside of them were usually viewed as being evil and stuff like that, right, by the Israelites. But we know now that Gentiles, they're also children of God. We all come from the same two people, Adam and Eve, right? But it's the religion that God had the most problem with, because it's like Israel like believed in God, but every other nation, they didn't. So let's take a look at Leviticus 20 verse 1 to 5. So the Lord said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, any Israelite or any foreigner residing in Israel who sacrifices any of his children to Molech is to be put to death. The members of the community are to stone him. I myself will set my face against him and will cut him off from his people. For by sacrificing his children to Molech, he has defiled my sanctuary and profaned my holy name. If the members of the community close their eyes when a man sacrifices one of their children to Molech, if they fail to put him to death, I myself will set my face against him and his family and will cut them off from their people, together with all who follow him in prostituting themselves to Molech." So Molech was one of the gods of the Gentiles, like one of the gods of the Philistines, I believe. And to give you a bit more context, a lot of the other nations, they would do like horrific stuff, like baby sacrificing, child sacrifice, human sacrifice. They would do orgies, all these weird, like really bad stuff to worship their gods, right? And that's the hold the devil has on them. And people are asking, it's like, well, you see, the devil, he kills like, I don't know, maybe 3 people, maybe no people at all in the story of the Bible. God killed like millions of people, like he told the Israelites to go kill all those people, right? This is the kind of stuff that they were practicing. And it's not that they didn't have the chance to repent. They did. When the Israelites came, they were like, "Yo, we are the holy people of God, surrender or be destroyed." They're like, "Nah, we like doing what we want to do." And God's like, "Yeah, crush those guys," And that's exactly what they did. They had to purge the lands of all this wicked stuff in order to live in that land. But that's not what God has called Israel to do. So let's take a look at the new ideas and the new worlds that God has created through Israel. Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Anyways, so here's a small example. So Leviticus 17:11 says, "For the life of the creature is in the blood, and I have given it to you to make atonement for yourselves on the altar. It is the blood that makes atonement for one's life." He's talking about animals, not humans. And so, they sacrifice animals, not humans. That sets them apart from everybody else automatically. But take a look at what it says, right? The blood is the life of a creature is in the blood. I mean, this is back when people were like bleeding people to death, to try and like cure them of cold. You're like, oh, take out the knife, take out the leeches, let's get all that bad stuff out of you, right? And people were like literally drilling holes in people's heads to like take out all the bad liquid. And people found like skulls with like holes drilled in their head, and some of them actually survived, because there's evidence of them healing, which is interesting. But I don't think you want a hole drilled in your head to cure your illness, right? But but the Bible clearly states that the life of a creature is in its blood. This is revolutionary. This is like decades. Like we didn't realize this until embarrassingly not very long ago. Like a couple hundred years. We're like. They were like they actually tried treating George Washington with his illness by bleeding him, and he died. And they're like, maybe blood is important. I don't know, but that's just a small example. Let's go to a bigger example. So Exodus 21, 2-4. "If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for 6 years. But in the 7th year, he shall go free without paying anything. If he comes alone, he is to go free alone. But if he has a wife, when he comes, she is to go with him. If his master gives him a wife and she bears him sons or daughters, the woman and her children shall belong to her master, and only the man shall go free." Now, this is just a law about owning a slave, right? Because the Israelites wanted slaves, and God met them halfway and gave them this law. But, you would think, the Israelites were like a cruel nation for having slaves, but if, as you guys know, slavery was a lot worse than this. It's like people being whipped and like abused, and they never go free, right? And so this automatically sets Israel apart from the other nations. It's just basically say, hey, you get to keep your slave for 7 years. That's it. And, they can go free. Unless the slave wants to, stay with you, then, they'd be branded their ear or something like that, and then they would stay with you because they're married to your slave. Then they would stay with you or whatever, which is cool. But but this is not the only example. There are other examples in the law of them setting themselves apart from other nations in regards to like their laws of like what happens if a neighbor steals from you, what happens if all this other stuff happens. Like there's a law where it says you got to put like rail guards on your roof because children play on the roof all the time. Apparently, that is just to prevent them from falling off. And so what the laws are doing is setting them apart from the nations, saying like, hey, look at us. We are like a really good nation. We got great rules. We're like functioning like an advanced society, and it would stand out, and other nations would look at them and say, huh, those guys know what they're doing. So my first point is that the Bible is full of new, innovative ideas that were alien to others. The Gentiles would have saw, Israel, just like we kill whoever offends us, and Israel's like, we offer forgiveness. If they don't want it, then we kill them. It's like, you offer forgiveness? What kind of freaks are you, right? And it's like, you do what to your 8-day-old sons? Okay, but these new ideas were alien to others, and they were new and innovative. That they were like the basis of what we today base our country off of forgiveness, freedom of speech, and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of like America. I'm not saying America is holy or anything like that. I mean, you look at politics today; it's all chaos. But back then, the idea of America was revolutionary. But Israel came up with it first, thousands of years ago, before America was even discovered. And so let's keep going. So we're going to be looking at how they fought each other, the wars that they fought in the Old Testament. This is the passage of scripture that I wanted to do last week, but I didn't get to because I kind of picked out the wrong scripture. But for context, the king of Israel, Zedekiah, mentioned here. He was the Babylonians were coming to take them out, right? And so Zedekiah calls Jeremiah, who's kind of written this book, and he calls him and asks him, what do I do? I want to be able to survive after all. And Jeremiah says, makes him promise not to tell anybody else and all that kind of stuff. But Jeremiah basically says, if you surrender, then you'll live. Your family and everybody will live, and all that. But if you don't surrender, then you're going to face some really bad consequences. Needless to say, Zedekiah did not listen, as per in this chapter. But the Babylonian army pursued them and overtook Zedekiah in the plains of Jericho. They captured him and took him to the Nebuchadnezzar, king Babylon, in Riblah, in the land of Hamath, where he pronounced sentence on him. There at the Riblah, the king of Babylon slaughtered the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and also killed all of the nobles of Judah. Then he put out Zedekiah's eyes and bound him with bronze shackles to take him to the Babylonians. Now earlier, when the Babylons came, Jeremiah also said that they would burn down the place, And when the Babylonians came, instead of just giving up, surrendering, it's like, okay, we're completely subservient to you. It describes. It doesn't describe why he did it, but it just describes that they fought them, and the Babylonians had to siege the entire place, and they had to break down the walls. And Zedekiah tried to run from the king of Babylon, and this is what happened. What the Lord said came to pass. Oh, by the way, we're not actually going to go into the book of Acts for this one because all these concepts happen later and after the book of Acts. So let's take a look at the new ways that we wage war. So in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 12, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers in their dark world, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. We've been through this 1,000 times. But as an example, hang on, let me just. As an example, this new series on Disney Plus, the Bad Batch, I really like it. And, I'm not going to spoil any of it for you, not too much. But if you've seen it, good for you. But if you haven't, I'm not going to spoil too much of it. So anyways, so if you've seen the first season, that guy over there, Crosshairs, betrays these guys, and they go their separate ways. But there's this one episode which I found pretty interesting about how the Empire is taking over the entire galaxy, raiding planets and stuff like that. And Crosshairs is sent to this one planet who refused to follow the Empire, or give themselves up to the Empire. Now that's about as much information I'm going to give you about that episode. But this planet, they were like in their own little bubble. They were like, the Empire is other people's problem. Our planet is completely fine. We're out of their jurisdiction, right? And so it's like we're totally fine. We're safe here. The Empire will never come to us. We just got to worry about our own problems. But eventually the Empire did become their problem. They landed in their planet, and they were like, we're taking over. You get out of power. And they're like, what? No, I'm not going to step out. I'm going to rebel against you. And so they thought they knew that the Empire. They didn't think the Empire was a problem until it was too late. And so by the time it was too late, the Empire came to take over their planet. And so let's take a look at, and it's like today. Israel was like so focused on their own problems, they didn't care about the Gentiles' problems, which they probably shouldn't have, because if they got wrapped up in the Gentiles' problems, then their problems become their problems, right? But Israel was like so self-centered, and that's what kind of like made God angry at them quite a bit. Like they were ostracizing the Samaritans and the Edomites and stuff like that, who were relatives of the Israelites. And they completely like alienated them, right? And so the Israelites were completely focusing on the worldly things. They were focusing on their own problems and fighting physical battles that either God blessed them or completely abandoned them in this whole thing. Like what we see with Babylon, they took over Israel and took them away for like 70 years. And then we got the 400-year gap of the Bible, and so eventually Jesus comes to show us a new way to wage war, and this is one of the coolest ways that he waged war against our real enemy of the spiritual powers. So in Matthew chapter 5 verses 1 to 17, they went across the lake to the region of Gerasenes. What? Gerasenes. The Gerasenes. Sorry, the R and the S looks really similar. So when Jesus got to the boat, a man with an impure spirit came to the tomb to meet him. This man lived in tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart, and he broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. So the people, here, when they see a demon-possessed man like this who is stronger than anybody, they tried fixing the problem with physical force and violence. It's trying to treat the symptoms of his problem. That's what the world has been doing up until this point. They're trying to treat the symptoms of the problem, waging war with each other. People are like jealous of their land. They were like, and the guys who own the lands, like, these guys are jealous of our land. Let's wage war against them. Those are just the symptoms. War is a symptom of sin. Sin is the real problem. That's what Jesus came to address. And so these guys, they're addressing the symptoms of this man's actual disease. He was like crazy, violent, super strong. As cool as it sounds to like be incredibly strong, this guy was being tormented day and night, which is why he was screaming and cutting himself. But these guys tried treating him by just chaining him up, subduing him. But that did not solve the problem, because the root of his problem was just too great, and that is exactly the condition that the world was in. The people tried waging wars against each other, tried to conquer the world to get rid of all violence. But the symptom of the world, the symptom of humanity, the disease of humanity is too great for anybody to overcome alone, except for Jesus. So when he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of that man, you impure spirit." So he already tried, casting him out, but the spirit refused. It's like, you refused Jesus? What? But then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. So legion is a Roman term, which kind of like describes like 500 to 1,000 troops. Just so you know, he probably could have had a couple thousand demons in him. That must have been really painful. And so a large herd of pigs was feeding on a nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go to them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd of about 2,000 in number. Yeah, I see there were 2,000 pigs, so they possessed all those pigs. 2,000 in number rushed down the steep bank into the lake where they were drowned. And so Jesus has completely vanquished the real disease of this man's suffering, which was the demons inside of him, and sent them out into the pigs. And them wanting Jesus to send them into the pigs ultimately did lead to their destruction, because they died, and they likely went back to hell either way. But that's why they didn't want Jesus to cast them out. They didn't want to go back to hell, because they knew what it was like. and so that's exactly how we should be. Instead of trying to put other people down, instead of trying to fight physically or mentally or verbally, we need to take a look at the problems spiritually. People always have a problem spiritually, and when there's a saying that hurt people. And so when you see somebody hurting you, that means that there's something going on in their life, and that you need to reach out to them. Of course, don't do it to. If you're going to get yourself hurt doing it, don't do it. But if you are able to get them the help that they need, then by all means get them the help that they need. But that is what the world needs right now. They don't need more guns. They don't need more lasers. They don't need spaceships going around fighting each other in space. What we need is a real solution to the innermost struggles of the human desire. So I'm almost done. Don't worry. We're 22 minutes in. So those tending to the pigs ran off, and this is the sad truth about this disease, is that not everybody can be cured, if they don't want to be cured anyways. So those tending to the pigs ran off and reported this to the town and the countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened, and they came to Jesus and saw the man who had been possessed by a legion of demons sitting there, dressed in his right mind, and they were afraid. That's an interesting feeling to be. It's like this guy was like tormenting us. It's like, I saved you. Oh no, So those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. So why are they doing this? So I read a devotional one time about this very subject. And basically, you would think at first glance, I thought at first glance that he just killed 2,000 pigs, right? It's like that's their profit. They just he just like $2,000 down the drain, right? But that's not entirely true. Another thing that made them so afraid of Jesus was this guy who they tried to subdue for so long, who they tried to fight physically with him. Jesus just comes and says, "Get out of the man," and he just gets out of the man. That means this guy is clearly more powerful than a man, of course, but that's not it. Because everybody has darkness in their life, and Jesus is light. And so the darkness in this man's life, the demon-possessed man, was evident. Everybody saw the darkness in his life, and it took a light like Jesus in order to cast that darkness out. But now that people have seen how Jesus has cast out this darkness in this man, they are now afraid of their own darkness being exposed to the light. Because people who live in darkness are afraid of the light. And so these people wanted Jesus to go out as far away as possible so they can keep living in this darkness. And so afterwards, if you've read the story, the demon-possessed man, tries going with Jesus, and Jesus is like, "Nah, go back to your own hometown and, proclaim what I've done for you." And that's exactly what he does. But in my second point is that war is not limited to the world. Like in Sci-Fi, that planet I was talking about in the Bad Batch, they were like, our problems are our problems. The Empire is not our problems. But eventually their problems started to affect them, and they realized too late, but that the empire was everybody's problem in the galaxy. And it's the same here. When we're like, in our Earth, developing, we're like fighting each other. We're like, like we're all humans, and we're fighting each other. Like, oh, I'm going to kill you. But later on in the future, like in Star Trek, they realize that their problems are not just limited to the Earth, but that there's problems up in space as well that want to conquer them. The Klingons, the Cardassians, not to be confused with the Cardassians. They're like reptile creatures. Which I guess yeah, that does make sense, yeah. But anyway, so all those alien races, plotting against the human race, the earthly problems, suddenly become a space, galaxy, or even universe problems. And in the new Star Trek trilogy with Chris Pine it's also a time problem, because these villains, travel back in time and disrupted the timeline, and they have to deal with these guys, which is cool. But it's not just limited to Earth. It's not just limited to the physical realm. It's also the biggest problem that humanity has ever faced is in the spiritual. Just like the biggest problem that people face in science fiction was in space. So let's finish up by talking about the future. So what is going to happen to all of these problems in the future, you may ask? So the science fiction genre is all about the future, or the past if you're talking about Star Wars. I'm still confused about that. I have no idea what that's all about. But in the future, it's like they got all these problems and all these really big things that they got to deal with, like in Star Trek. So let's talk about the final battle between God and sin. So in Revelation 11:1-10, so I was given a reed like a measuring rod, and was told to go and measure the temple of God and the altar with its worshippers, but exclude the outer court. Do not measure it, because it has been given to the Gentiles. They will trample on the holy city for 42 months. And I will appoint my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. They are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands, and they stand before the Lord on the earth. If anyone tries to harm them, fire comes from the mouth, devouring their enemies. This is how anyone who wants to harm them must die. They have power to shut up heavens so that it will not rain during the time that they are prophesying, and they have power to turn the water into blood and to strike the earth with every kind of plagues as often as they want. And so what he's talking about is the 2 witnesses that are coming, who are going to be witnessing during the time of Revelation and being like, hey, turn from your sins, repent before God, and he will spare you. And, everyone's going to hate him, but they're going to be like, bro, nah, I got thunder and lightning, And anybody who tries to harm them, they'll be like, they'll just die, basically. So going on to the next. So now they will have finished their testimony. So when they have finished their testimony, the beast that comes from the abyss will attack them and overpower and kill them. Their bodies will lie in the public square of the great city, which is figuratively called Sodom and Egypt. Figuratively. I find that ironic because, the Bible, whenever it uses figurative language, it never tells you that it's figurative. It's just like, you got to figure it out for yourself. But this is figurative, okay? It's not actually Sodom and Egypt. It's just figurative. So where also the Lord was crucified for 3.5 days, some from every people, tribe, language, and nation will gaze on their body and refuse them burial. And the inhabitants of the earth will gloat over them, and will celebrate by sending each other gifts, because the 2 prophets had who tormented their whole life on the earth. Now that's another, yeah. Oh yeah, 45 seconds. Yeah, I see that. So the basic premise. We're going to close out in prayer, but these people are going to. Are coming, and Jesus is going to vanquish the earth. And so with that said, I suppose we should close out in prayer. So you can end the camera. Yeah, like, comment, and subscribe. Yeah, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. All right, cut. Yeah. Just gonna.
5, 4,
Okay.
3, 2,
All right.
1.